We're here in Richmond with Boris Johnson and some of his campaigners. We've got with us Amandeep Singh Bhogal, who is the GLA candidate for the Conservative Party. So Amandeep, how is the campaign going?
The campaign is going very well. Today we've had the formal launch of the Boris 2012 campaign here in Richmond, and the campaign is progressing very well all over London. And as Buddy said, I'm standing on the London wide list from the party.
It seems that the campaign has become a lot about personalities as opposed to policy. I mean, where do you stand on the issue of economic growth in London, and what would Boris, or what would you do if you were elected to help to tackle this?
You know, personalities do matter in this particular election, because after all we are voting primarily for an actual person as mayor. We're not voting just for a party. What Boris has achieved in the last term of his is absolutely great. I mean, he's got a 9-point plan to take London forward, rather than take London back into a lurch of the previous mayor, Ken Livingstone. And I believe that we have the right policy in London to take the city forward economically, because of the 9-point plan that Boris has created to take London forward. I really don't think Ken has got any hold on how to do that, other than just to attack and bring in draconian, trosticus, back-looking policies.
Okay, let's talk about some of the specifics.
Yeah.
So Boris Johnson believes that he can create 200,000 new jobs.
Yes.
And he's hoping to do that primarily through transport, the Olympics, as kind of key hubs to helping employment flourish. What specifically, other than that, could Boris Johnson do to help to up employment in London?
Well, of course, Boris has anointed that there's going to be a £70 million fund for small to medium enterprise businesses, which is going to be given to young entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I think that will go a great way, to really push to grow jobs and youth employment, for example. And Team London, I mean, that's a huge initiative that is being taken at the moment forward, where volunteers are working across youth groups in schools, in other places where they're volunteering their time, but to get the youth together and get them doing things, rather than what we had last year, where 13 years of labour had left them disenchanted with nothing to do. So I think that is the way forward.
I mean, and I ask this more from a personal capacity than anything else.
Sure.
I mean, I live not too far from here, and I commute into London, and I can say that it is very costly. There was a recent report that was published which suggests that the average 22-mile journey, if you were using the overground and underground from, just say, Woking in Surrey to the centre of London, would cost something like £3,200. Now, a similar 22-mile journey in Berlin would cost around £750, in Paris less than that, and in Madrid maybe around £650. Now, clearly that shows to me that it's not just me and my emotions that are speaking, but actually transport is overpriced. And Ken, for his sins, some may say, actually is proposing to bring down the cost of transport in London by around 7% if elected. Now, what would Boris and the Conservatives do if they came to power?
Well, if Boris was re-elected, first of all, I would love to say that Ken has made many promises in the past to cut costs, to cut travel fares, and he has not done that. In fact, he's done the opposite of that in the past. So the precedent for him is just not there of actually doing that. But I will say this much, that if we do get back into power in London, we will bring costs further down by a very simple and forward-looking initiative, which is driverless trains, the automation of the train system, especially the underground. I mean, we are living, in the past at the moment, as far as the train system and railways are concerned in London. I mean, you have Singapore, for example, which has automated its trains. Even Paris has automated its Line 1, which is a great initiative. I think it will reduce our costs as far as employing people to first of all run the trains. They'll still be employed, but as train captains. Which is already been experienced on the DLR, for example.
So, Andy, just to kind of make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. So,
yeah.
So actually, you're saying that Boris would propose through the driverless trains to reduce the price paid by consumers on transport?
Well, of course, this will have a knock-on effect on fares, and Boris has, of course, promised not to raise fares. I think RPI plus a few percent, but still less than what Ken has promised.
So he would not reduce fares?
No, he would not increase fares, that's for sure. But because of automation, fares would have a chance of reduction because there'll be less cost. We'll be taking the cost out, the major cost out of running the train system, and at the same time making it more efficient, and taking the human error out of driving the trains themselves.
I appreciate that. Okay, so just kind of developing on the theme of transport.
Yeah.
We've heard planes go by as we've been preparing to do this interview,
yeah.
and we're quite nearby the London Borough of Hounslow, which is of course the base of Heathrow Airport. Now, talking about transport and employment and making London a viable place for business to locate, actually there are studies put forward by Oxford Economics most recently that suggest that something like 140,000 jobs could be lost if we don't expand Heathrow. Something like £8.5 billion could be lost from the British economy. Where do the Conservatives and Boris Johnson stand on the expansion of Heathrow and the third runway?
Well, Boris Johnson has very clearly, again, reiterated his views on this matter today, and that is that as long as Boris is mayor, there will be no third runway at Heathrow. It's as simple as that. It is, you point out to some economic factors that may be advantageous, but the advantage of not having a third runway is far greater to the actual people living in the area, in the sense of less pollution, less noise, and of course the actual congestion of the area if a third runway was built. What Boris has proposed, of course, is an airport further towards the east of the city, labelled in the media as Boris Airport recently, but I think that may be a way forward rather than a third runway at Heathrow, which is already so congested.
I mean, Boris Island is contentious. Some have argued that it would work. Others, such as the ex-Chancellor, said it doesn't. But I think you've touched on a very important point, and that is the environment.
Yes.
If I was just to kind of expand on that slightly, so Ken has criticised Boris Johnson for saying, well, he doesn't really look at environmental issues, he hasn't really taken them into regard. He's putting forward several ideas, such as smart cities, smart grid, helping to bring in buses which don't congest and don't release pollutants. What specifically is Boris Johnson doing in terms of the green agenda?
Well, Boris Johnson, of course, recently he's got rid of that bendy bus, that horrible bendy bus that used to riddle London. And I will use the word riddle because it really did. Such long, horrible buses that were bought in by Ken. They're gone. And instead he's bought in a British-built bus which has been built in Northern Ireland with British technology and British jobs, and which is very, very green. It's on par with any other product available on the market today. But the key thing is British built, sporting British jobs, and it's again hop on, hop off. The system there, and it's in time for the Olympics. And I think that is again other thing than that. Boris has helped plant so many thousands of green trees around London, which of course were paid for in lieu of the propaganda sheet that Ken used to print, costing a few £1 million a year, which Boris of course scrapped and used some of that money to plant trees rather than send out his personal propaganda as Ken used to do for residents in London.
Let's talk a little bit about your campaign. I mean, how's it going, and what are some of the challenges? How have you found it as an experience?
Well, of course, I was selected by the party as one of the candidates on the London-wide list, which means I'm standing for the whole of London under the proportional representation system that is in effect in London elections. But I have been particularly attached with two constituencies to lead the campaign in two constituencies, East Thamesmead and Bexley Heath and Crayford in South East London, and the campaign is going really well. I've had a lot of support from our these two local associations, and all the officers there, the activists, the councillors, have been listening and working hard to get out our message across to the residents there. And already we have put out hundreds of thousands of leaflets to residents. I mean, even yesterday Boris was in Bexley Heath meeting people on Easter Monday in the rain, I will say, but he's a rock star. People came rushing to him to take autographs, to take signs in their books, and get photographs with him. And I mean, the campaign is going so well that Boris has visited Bexley East and South East London far much more than Ken Livingstone ever did.